So one thing that I haven't heard too much of, by the way, my name is Nonek, and some people in this room have called me a Bolshevik, and I find that funny. I'm also a subject of a WikiLeak. I am in one of the documents during the 2008 Olympic protests. I was deported from China, and I just find it funny that I have a WikiLeak about me. So, so one thing that in my role. Yeah, you can buy them on the Students for a Free Tibet website. You can get them now for your holiday gift shopping. So one thing that, I work for government, though I don't represent government in this particular capacity. Here I'm a citizen and a political activist, and am willing to throw my physical body into environments to protest the states that exist. So within the context of a digital democracy, how do I throw my physical self onto the train tracks or in front of the tanks? How do I show civil disobedience, legitimate civil disobedience in a digital democracy and not get called, you're a vandal, you're a Bolshevik, you're a terrorist? What's my answer? Well, to that question is DDoS is a legitimate form of civil disobedience. To be able to take down any type of actor, and if we have white hat hackers who work for governments and essentially are taking down other governments, then there are legitimate forms for organizations like Anonymous, 4chan to self-organize, self-congregate themselves, and to express their political opinion in ways that are stateless. So, but I want to hear more of that because we talk about news, we talk about government, but what about the people? Where's the power to the people to kind of self-organize and protest?
Harden, as I go around, you were going to say something?
The discussion's already resembling a stream of comments underneath the blog with nothing being answered. I want to address
That's otherwise known as life, yes.
Well, one can actually structure proper debate, and that's one of the problems with the internet, is that proper debate is not really structured, and that is one of the requirements of a polis, is one of the requirements of a proper democracy. But I want to address the question from the lady about the State Department. What can the State Department do to be more open? How should it respond to WikiLeaks? I wrote 70,000 words about this in a book called Independent Diplomat, Dispatches from an Unaccountable Elite, which kind of explains what I think about it. But I've got three very short suggestions. One is, obviously, it needs to release far more data. There needs to be a default of releasing data rather than not. The second is, of course, to do what you say, not to do something differently from what you say. And that, I think, has become particularly pertinent the last few years. The third is, you really want to make a release of WikiLeaks or analysis of American foreign policy as boring as talking about the administration of your local hospital, something that matters but is actually not very exciting, or say analysing Swedish foreign policy because the Swedes more or less do what they say. Their public rhetoric matches their private policy. That's why Sweden's quite boring to analyse in foreign policy terms. The fourth is a more general point about the polis, which we seem to be groping towards, about this question of what is democracy and how does democracy respond to WikiLeaks, to the virtual world. And I think we're just kind of casting around at the beginning of this debate. We don't have any coherent answers at the moment. All I would say is that there is an obligation to become more intelligent yourself about foreign policy if you are to demand WikiLeaks. When I was working on Iraq policy, one of the reasons we felt utterly immune to public pressure was because most of the public pressure and the vast majority of the media scrutiny was so fantastically ill-informed and stupid. The other final point, there is a question here about virtual versus real, material versus virtual. What is real political action? The China-Tibet activist asked this question, how can I throw myself on the tracks? My answer would be throw yourself on the tracks. Doing something in the virtual world does not equate to real material political effect. The comparison I draw is between the millions of people who sign internet petitions to see free Aung San Suu Kyi, which, well, actually in the last few weeks that has had some effect, but it's not the internet petitions that freed her. With the tens of thousands of people who volunteered to fight fascism in the 1930s, they took their own bodies and sometimes sacrificed their lives to stop something they detested. Internet activism doesn't do it for me.
We've got 15 minutes and tons of people, so please make your point, because possible, just to add into the discussion. We're not going to solve things today.
This is based upon what Doug said earlier about net neutrality. And I guess my simple question is net neutrality as it's commonly understood possible even today?
Run in the back, there are patient men back here, and then we'll run all around.
Yeah, I would say, well, it certainly doesn't exist today. You know, the net neutrality exists as a social construction now, not as an artifact of the technology, right? So we have net neutrality, but for something like it, because the people running the net are allowing us to have it. But we could, and it's not that hard, we could build a net that had net neutrality as sort of an intrinsic quality of its architecture.
Back here.
Yeah, I think today we've talked a lot about the distinction between private and secret. And I think it's just useful to add a third layer to that, which I think in all of our lives we engage in that usually, which is just the routinely confidential. So I think one of the reasons that WikiLeaks, I agree, overreached this time is because they took, we all in our lives have conversations. Micha and Andrew decided who was going to be on this panel. Foundations talk about grantees, universities talk about hires. Those are not secret things. They are routinely confidential things. We all do those. And I think they have a strong place in a social fabric. We need those routinely confidential conversations sometimes to just run our lives. And so I think that living in a world where that kind of stuff would be routinely made public would be hellish, at least to me. And so I think one of the reasons we see this big backlash now is it's one thing to sort of come out and whistleblow a crime. It's different to disclose a bunch of routinely confidential stuff that people need to do their work. And just a distinction there.
Right. Well, people also have to change their perception of the net to realize that when they're typing anything into a keyboard, you are creating a record that lasts longer than the words etched on the side of the Parthenon. I mean, this is permanent. Or not.
Hi, I'm Jed. This is a great Flash conference. In the transparency community, in the U.S. and internationally, there's concern that the overreach in response to WikiLeaks will set back innovations that have been made and are being made, at this moment in transparency. And I'm wondering the same thing about innovation itself. Like Rebecca's point, if we don't want to rebuild the wheel of having to re-explain to the technophobes and the transparentophobes and the leakophobes, why there's something good happening despite the challenges, despite the risks. How do we, this community, have a standing structure to demystify quickly?
Yeah, just very quick announcement. Apparently Anonymous is in the live chat because we have 1984 live viewers.
We have something from the live chat.
Yeah, so I was, in response to what you were saying, Nonek, on what are the new forms of civil disobedience, because I saw earlier that Anonymous was following the tweet as well. So I just wanted to read their new strategy that they put out. It says, so Anonymous is the sort of self-organized group that had been putting out these DDoS attacks. We have at best given them a black eye. The game has changed. When the game changes, so too must our strategies. Operation Leakspin. Begin searching through WikiLeaks, wikileaks.ch. Find only the best, least exposed links you can get your hands on. Post summaries them along with the complete source. Encourage the reader to read more. Make a 1 to 2 minute YouTube videos reading the links. Use misleading tags, everything from Tea Party to Bieber. Post snippets of the links everywhere, or leaks everywhere. News, comments, fan forums, etc. So that's another kind of civil disobedience.
And doesn't that smell like journalism, Gideon?
Yeah, guerrilla journalism.
Lots of hands up, Jeff.
I know. I'm going around as fast as I can.
Yeah, sorry for being contrarian. I'm Bob Wyman. I'd like to object. I think under no circumstances a distributed denial of service attack or any attack against the network ever a legitimate action. We all are concerned about the freedom to speech and crimes against the free speech. To attack the mere ability to speak, the capacity to speak itself, that to me seems to be the ultimate of crimes. I think we need to have an idea of crimes against the network, and a crime against the network should be considered an attack on every single one of us and be the worst of all possible crimes, no matter what justification.
Well said. I'm not supposed to express my opinion now, but well said.
Hi, my name's Mark. I want to follow up with the quote that Gideon mentioned earlier and then Todd you referenced. I think implicit in the Assange quote is the assumption that, at least certainly in the US, but most developed governments, that the government is often working and setting public policy in concert with interests that are not part of the electorate. So part of creating that secrecy tax is attacking the wealthy corporate interests as public policy is being set in a democracy and trying to get more of a true democracy back in place. I believe that is the point behind the Assange quote. So I don't think it's quite as black and white as you suggested.
Alex Howard, O'Reilly Media. Just to reflect what Bob said, I think that it's important just to reflect upon free speech in the Bill of Rights and what it means to have that reflected online. What Ethan Zuckerman's written recently about it being a commercial internet that our discourse is being hosted upon. The position that Twitter and Facebook now find themselves in being the main outlets for WikiLeaks to share information with the world that people can actually find. They're making very difficult choices. They're going to come under a lot of pressure from all sides in terms of keeping those outlets open. But when we choose to encourage or enable or empower people to shut down outlets of free speech online, you have to think very carefully about how we're actually reflecting the freedom of speech that I'm enjoying right now here in New York City to talk to all of you, whether we're then knocking that ability out for other people to share their thinking. I think the answer to free speech is more of it, not less.
And by the way, Alex, very good tweeting today. Thank you.
Hey, my name is Deanna Zand. I'm an author and technologist here in New York. I want to be clear, coming back to this discussion about what DDoS is and whether it's free speech or not. DDoS, for those who aren't clear about this, is not hacking. It is not destroying something. It is not causing permanent damage. It is a digital form of committing similar to what you would do with a sit-in. You would temporarily disable the ability for someone to render their services and make their services available. That is a legitimate form of civil disobedience. So if we want to talk about free speech and the ability to voice our opinions online, and you'd look at what the corporations running the public spaces where we want to commit those acts of free speech and their ability to take that away immediately, how do we react to that? How do we take away their ability to stop us from doing what we will within our rights?
I will take the prerogative of the microphone to say that I think we, as Todd said, we're doing nothing less than going back to defining the polis, which is a big task. So I would suggest that we look at this as kind of making an outline of points for debate for the future and discussion. And I think that that point is well made now, and I hope we have a great variety of ideas.
Hi, I'm Lisa Lynch, and I wanted to give Jay a chance to nuance his statement that the watchdog press had died, because I know that you don't mean that there's this kind of permanent and universal institution called the watchdog press, and it's a very historically specific phenomenon, and that it's very different in the United States than elsewhere. So I just wanted you to say a few more words about that.
Sure. What I mean is the idea was that journalists would keep a watch on power, find out what is happening, if necessary, trade our right to know who their sources are for important information that we need to know anyway, penetrate the secret world on our behalf, like with the parking garage and the source in All the President's Men. And if it was really important, it would come out in time for us to make a difference. And what I'm saying when I say the watchdog press died is not that there aren't any journalists anymore who want to do that. There are, and occasionally it happens, as with James Risen and the leak about the government spying on us. But overall, that system does not work to protect us against power concealing its purpose and its deeds and doing things without us having any idea. And so we have to replace that system with a more distributed, public, stronger system, because we can't rely on the watchdog press to tell us what they're doing in time for us to make a difference. That's what I mean.
We're redefining the polis, we're redefining the press, which goes to Gideon's point too, that maybe we have a whole new system, new opportunities, new ways that are just different from the past. Yeah?
Thanks. I'm Bob Rosencrantz. I run Intelligence Squared Debates. I just wanted to be sure that people were aware that among the leaked documents here was a list of vital infrastructure targets around the world, things that Al-Qaeda could very profitably attack. These are many obscure things, many undefended kinds of things that you wouldn't ordinarily think of. But there is in the list of leaked documents a very exhaustive shopping list of targets that would be of enormous assistance to those who wish us the most grievous kind of harm. And I think when we think about that and that kind of material being out there, I think it has to inform the discussion and make it a little perhaps less abstract than some of the comments I've been hearing today.
Okay, I'm going to make enemies here. We don't have time for everybody.
3 minutes, Jeff.
3 minutes, Jesus. All right, I've been over here. So on geography, fairness of geography, I'm going over here.
I just want to point out to that last speaker that this point has been raised a lot, and it's a good one, but folks have been pointing out that what's in that leak in particular is available to around 3 million people who have security clearance to look at it. It's not top secret stuff, it's secret stuff. The distinction may not be obvious to everybody, but that makes it available to about 3 million people, and if it can't get out on its own through that, it's probably not all that valuable that it's being made out to be without the context.
Okay, I am